you are rich and you are not enjoying your money, the people that are very rich yesterday or previous years, where are they? They are dead. They are gone now. So if you are rich and you are just saving your money, you don't know who will enjoy and spend it. So while you are alive and you are rich, just spend your money and enjoy it. Yes, of course, there is a proper context of that song.
Right.
But it seems so many people have that similar mindset that, well, I don't want to leave my money for some other people to spend. I would rather enjoy it. And like you said, gradually, just like the frog, they keep digging, digging and digging themselves into debt. And I guess that is why you will see people that will use their credit card to buy ticket to go on a vacation. I've heard of people borrowing money to buy a wedding ring or to entertain people for their wedding. It is gradual. And it's all about this nature that is competing or that wants to compare themselves with their neighbor.
Right.
And I'm curious, how can one be delivered from such kind of mindset and nature?
Wow, that's the age-old question right there, DJ. You can, if you know how that, you come up with a good answer for that. There's no. I wish that there was a pill you could take. I wish that you could go to be hypnotized, a hypnotist, and then just wake up and like, whoa, I've got a different mindset. Unfortunately, most of the time it doesn't work that way. Most of the time it is a painful, self-denying process on the front end of going through the pain and the sacrifice to come out the other end with a different mindset. So, but like I said before, it's a process, but it's kind of like this, right? When you go to the gym, if you've never worked out and you first go to a gym to start working out, it's very hard at first. And your muscles are sore. You hate getting up early or earlier. You hate just the whole process. It's uncomfortable. It's unfamiliar. It's not easy. And you have to think about it, right? But the longer you do it, one, you start seeing results. And that's motivation. You start getting used to the schedule, right? You start conditioning your body to to be ready to go to the gym, and it just becomes your lifestyle. So it's not like something you have to do. It's something you enjoy doing. It's part of who you are, right? So in the same way, when it comes to money, spending money or being in debt, it's just the same process. It's hard at first. It's a sacrifice, but the longer you do it, and if you're consistent and you start seeing results, it just becomes part of who you are. It becomes second nature, and it becomes your character, right? And then it's like I can't even think about what it was like, before, when I had all this debt and I was always just buying stuff, whatever. And I'll tell you one other thing too, and this is for me. I mean, I can tell you this. If I go to a sports bar to watch a game, a match or something, right? I have zero temptation to get drunk, because that's just not. I've never had that propensity to be addicted to drugs or alcohol. I could sit in a bar all day long and drink water and not even be tempted in the least. If you could take me to the Green Hills Mall and walk through the mall for 30, 40 minutes, I'm 100% tempted to go and buy stuff. I am. I mean, it's just like, it's hard for me to just not it's hard for me to window shop. If my wife says, let's go window shop, let's go walk around. Okay, I know I'm going to buy something. I'm probably going to spend hundreds of dollars because it's hard for me to say no. I'll justify it. I'll see a sale. I'll say, something I need. I thought, when the reality is I really don't need anything, right? So how do I prevent myself from doing that? I don't go to the mall. I don't go hang out at the mall, right? I don't go hang out at at Fink's Jewelers and look at watches because I want to buy one. I'll find something that I have to have that I can't live without, right? So sometimes it's about conditioning yourself, just like, again, I want to use the analogy of somebody who struggles with alcohol. You don't go to hang out at bars. Mm-hmm. You don't go to a nightclub because you know your weakness. You know that your propensity, you're gonna struggle with that. And it's the same thing, like if you have a struggle with spending money, don't go hang out or don't go to malls. Don't, only go. And if you want to be real radical, if you need something, send somebody else to get it. Have your spouse or significant other, whatever, change the passcode on your Amazon account so you can't get into it, right? So just there's things to do, safeguard yourself because you understand what your weakness is until the mindset starts to change and you feel like you can handle it, And maybe that will never come, maybe it will, but I feel like I got a pretty good handle on spending, and yet every time I go with my wife to the mall, or I am seriously tempted. I want to buy something, and that's just that. But so I gotta realize that about myself. So
for example, for me now, there is a store here in Nashville that, like you said, anytime I enter, there is no way I will buy at least one shirt. And even though I don't need it,
right.
But wow, this looks nice. Okay. Then boom, I swipe the card.
Yeah.
But I don't need it.
Right.
So it is a question of putting the real guard.
Yeah.
But even now, it's even easy. You don't have to go to the mall, just on your laptop.
Sure. Yeah, it's worse. It's worse. But let me say, sometimes I think when we talk about these things, we're like buzzkills, right? We feel like, it could be like, these guys don't have any fun. They don't do anything, whatever. But, I think that you can be, I don't want to come across as you should never enjoy the fruit of your labor. You never enjoy yourself, because I think when you work hard, there's a time and a place for everything. And I think you can be responsible with money and be responsible with buying habits, not having to go in debt. But, if you are like you work hard and at some point you want to enjoy, right? You want to enjoy, you've made money and you want to enjoy it and you want to take a vacation or splurge once in a while. So I think it's important to give yourself some recognition or give yourself a little, a gift every once in a while and just splurge, Yeah. But that's where money management and budgeting comes in. That's maybe a whole different topic. We could talk about that, but really quickly, let's say you bring home $1,000 in a week, right? And for me, I'm going to tithe. So I'm going to take 100 of that and I'm going to give it to a charity, my church or somebody or whatever. I'm going to put some money away in my savings. I'm going to put some for retirement, make sure the bills are paid. Then whatever left over, I can do whatever I want with it, and not feel guilty. So if it's $100, I got $100 now. I can go spend it and blow it on whatever I want to. And I don't feel guilty. I'm not getting, it's not financially irresponsible. I've taken care of everything first. And now last I can do this. And so I think if, and some people, and I think there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with rewarding yourself. Otherwise, you're the singer in Nigeria, it's like, okay, I amassed all this money and I didn't feel I couldn't spend any of it and I die and I never got to enjoy any of it, and then my kids or whoever gets it, that's not what I'm advocating either.
Sure.
Sure.
So Dean, still along this line, I am curious about some purchases that people spend their money on, but they later regret it financially. Can you share a couple of expenses or things that people will spend their money on, but 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, they regret spending money on?
Yeah, usually these are luxury items. Okay, you're talking about like cars.
Okay,
and specifically maybe more expensive cars. jewelry, weddings. A lot of and almost to the person, DJ, I can tell you, if you ask a young married couple, if they had to do it all over again at their wedding, most everyone will tell you we spent too much money.
Wow.
And we shouldn't have spent that much money. We were still married afterward. Whether you spent a lot of money or little, we're still going to be married. We're still going to enjoy our friends and our guests and our family, but we didn't have to spend that much money. Most people don't even remember what happened at the wedding.
That's true.
We've both been to so many weddings. Do you remember like the best meal you ever had at a wedding?
That's all. I
don't. And yet those people that put that on were stressing over the food, right?
Yeah.
Most people could care less. As long as I'm not hungry when I leave, whether you have an open bar and serve mixed drinks or just beer and wine, I don't remember, so those are expenses that people regret, lavish expenses people regret. Oftentimes they could have saved that money. Cars, buying cars that were out of their, having finance cars that depreciate, that the newness wears off, and then you're stuck with a big car payment that you don't need. And, so those are some major regrettable expenditures that people usually have.
I know that social media exposure has dramatically increased comparison, spending and lifestyle inflation today.
Yep.
And, years back, our grandparents, possibly they will compare themselves to their neighbors. But today, we will compare ourselves to the influencers, the celebrities, and people that we don't even know.
Right.
Right. And as we're talking, I'm wondering that how much of Americans' debt problem is actually a comparison problem. That it is just because people compare themselves to other people and they feel that they are not enough. And therefore they think that spending money will make them to feel enough, important, or have that sense of self-worth, or that they will be respected.
Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, you're spot on. Before the onset of the internet and particularly social media, it was like the people that you were just around, you see every day, coworkers or neighbors or family or whatever. And now it's the world, right? You see people on the other side of the world that you don't know, that they appear to be living a certain lifestyle that you want or that looks attractive, and that I've got to get that, because that's really what's going to make me happy. And you and I both know that's not, it doesn't, right? But so I think that is a huge part of our discontentment of what we have, is looking at that.
Yeah. So, money remains one of the leading causes of divorce and problems in relationship generally. At times, it is not even the sex, it is not even communication. It is money. It's one of the leading causes of debt. And many people think of money in terms of, maybe it is just a question of what they have in their bank account, but that it is not just about paper, but that debt affects relationship. It affects people's health. It affects people in all areas of life.
Sure.
It also limits the opportunities that people have access to. How does debt quietly damage marriage and relationships generally?
Wow, that's a great question, and it's exactly right. When people struggle with debt, I mean, let's just talk about marriage. Let's start off with that one. you feel stressed, you feel anxiety, sometimes you can feel depression.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
That all those emotions affect your interpersonal relationship with your spouse, right? Your spouse could be off, at work, and they come home and you're sitting on the couch just depressed, or you come back from work and you're discouraged and you're depressed, and it's like, what's wrong? Did I do something wrong? No. Why are you in such a bad mood? It's almost like you have this dark cloud,
wow,
or this weight on your back, on your shoulders, and it's just pressing you down, and it's discouraging, and and it affects your mood. It affects your outlook on life. It affects it can affect your intimacy, and it affects so much. So it goes way beyond just the dollars and cents. Yeah. It does hit your emotion. Relationships, I know people, probably family, if I think about it, that are inhibited from doing family activities because they've got so much debt and they have no money that they can't enjoy, being with the, like, hey, the family's going on a vacation. I can't go. Why? Because I don't have the money. I'm in debt. I can't spend any more money, Okay. So you're limited, by that. Yeah. So that's just one example, but yeah, so it does affect your relationships. It affects your marriage. It does affect everything. And, on the positive, let's look on when you're out of debt, when you break free of that, the amount of freedom and lightness you feel when, not to mention, if you lose your job, during the pandemic, people lost their job, the people that lost their job that had no debt, now there's still bills to pay, right? You still have to eat, you still have to have electricity and water and heat and whatever. But when you don't have a $4,000 house payment, you don't have a $700 car payment, you don't have a $10,000 credit card bill that you got to make a payment on, it definitely, so you don't have to make as much money to cover your expenses. It definitely affects your lifestyle, so it goes way beyond, like you said, just the physical dollars and cents. It does affect every area of your life. So you're right.
So looking at the fact that it affects, it's quite shocking when you said even debt can actually affect somebody's sexual performance, because you are anxious, you are restless, you are in a state of depression, and therefore you are not in the moment, and that will affect your spouse. And so for me, it is something that is quite challenging and thought-provoking, that people underestimate the negative impact of debt, and also the possibilities, the freedom that one can actually enjoy when you are out of debt. So still talking about how debt impacts relationship. Should someone tell their partner their exact amount of debt before marriage? Let's say two people that are planning to get married now. Should they expose or share their debt before, signing the wedding paper?
100%. If I had to stress it even more, I know 1,000%, whatever, people 110, it doesn't. Yes, and yes, absolutely. Because, I've counseled many people that are going to get married, and the one person doesn't know the other person's debt. So that's why in pre-marriage counseling, one of the topics is financial, and that's where you should be transparent and you expose, and typically it's either credit card debt or it's student loan debt, but it can be substantial. Of course, people who are older get married, obviously, and sometimes but I'm talking about for the, people younger get married. But yeah, I think that is a huge deal. And, it's not something, it could be a deal breaker in some cases. And I know that it has been, but it's something you should obviously both be on the same page about. I mean, so the question behind the question is that when you're in a situation about to get married, you know, you can, with your soon-to-be spouse, you know, you can probably get through just about any situation as long as you're both on the same page in dealing with it. The challenge is when one person has a bad spending habit, and the other person is completely opposed to it, and they really don't deal with it, and then they get married. That's where the issues come. That's where the real tension is when, you know, someone's just used to spending, don't care about debt. I've always had debt all my life. My parents had debt. I'm just used to it. It's no big deal. The other person's like, wait a minute. No, I haven't. And I don't agree with this. And I don't want to live this way. Well, I'm going to live this way. You know, it's like, that's where it's a clash. So on the front end, dealing with that, you know, so yeah, you're right.
So can you describe the motivation that makes people to hide their debt? Is there a reason why couples hide their debt from one another?
What I've found is shame, embarrassment.
Wow.
And lastly, like I just said, sometimes people just don't care. They don't see it as a problem. Because in going back to what you said, it's normal.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, you've got a car payment and you've got credit cards, you got student loans. Yeah, everybody does. What's the big deal?
Yeah.
Wait a minute, I don't. It is a big deal. Well, no, it's not. Everybody has no, not everybody does. You know, so it's a different in mindset. But so sometimes it's just because people don't, you know, like they don't think it's wrong, or they don't think there's anything wrong with it. Or it could be, I'm just embarrassed. I don't want to share with you, you know, because I'm afraid what you're going to think of me, or you're going to think I'm a idiot for getting in debt, you know, and I'm ashamed. So it can be all those things.
Wow. So shame, embarrassment, or people don't even want to care about it,
right,
you know, makes people couples especially, to hide debt from one another. But this is someone that you should be completely open to.
Sure.
But because of that nature, we want to hide it.
That's
and
right.
I also think that as a man, you know, there is also an ego.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, that, wow, I'm expected to be in charge, to be in control, to have it all together. And I don't want my partner to know that I don't have it all together.
That's right.
And therefore, I keeping the financial debt, the financial expenses.
Yep.
Because I've heard of cases where people are just making purchases unknown to their partner until they are deep in debt. So, wow. In fact, I've heard of a case where the guy lost his job and he was so embarrassed and feels ashamed to tell his wife. So, do you know what he does? This is so funny. He will leave home early in the morning, dressed up, get his laptop bag, and act as if he was actually going to work. But no, he was just going somewhere. And he will watch. As soon as the wife leaves the house,
he comes back.
That's
someone you know? You knew that?
No.
Oh.
I heard of
You heard of it, yeah.
But it's a question of the shame, the embarrassment.
Yeah.
And maybe they also feel that the other partner would not understand them.
Right.
And therefore they hide it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've worked with couples, again, as a financial advisor. Sometimes I'm a marriage counselor and a therapist in what I do. But I've had people, not to that degree. I've never heard that story. That's funny. But I know of, you know, when I've begun working with couples, and, you know, sometimes they have their own separate bank accounts, and that's fine. That's up to them. That's not for me to decide that. But oftentimes, they keep their finances separate, and one doesn't know what the other has or doesn't have, or like they have different credit cards. So that's I've seen that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Of course, there must be people that you have seen that have been able to make the transition from being debt and out of debt. there must come a time, a moment of truth, where they say, wow, enough is enough.
Yeah.
What do you think is responsible for that from the people that you have worked with? What takes them to that point and they say, I've had it enough. It is time to get my finances in order.
That's a good question. I'm glad you asked that because typically it's the same with any, maybe addiction problem or any kind of, problem you have is that you hit rock bottom. You come to a point where it's like, I can't, there's nothing, there's nowhere to go but up. I've got to deal with this, right? And so in that case, it's usually that, in my experience, people make enough money, but they're always broke. And so they come to realize, like, how is it that I have no money, I have no savings, but I make X amount of money? Like, where is it going?
Wow.
And, when you start getting into debt and just like the debt snowball to get out of debt, getting deeper in debt is a snowball also.
Wow.
Because when you start racking up debt, especially with credit cards, because the interest rate is 28%, right? That's excessive. And oftentimes you get to a point where all you're making is the minimum payment. You're never touching the principal, therefore you're never paying it off. And by the way, that's what credit card companies want you to do. That's why as long as you keep making payments, they'll keep extending your line of credit even more. But it just gets you deeper. The problem never goes away. So you'll literally be making, you start out $75 payment a month, but I'm not going to pay the I'm not paying it off. I'm just going to pay the minimum, but I'm going to keep using the credit card. The next month's $110. That's not a big deal. Then it's $130. Then, and then you wake up and it's $400 or $500 just for the minimum.
Wow.
Now you're talking about, that's a car payment for some people.
Yeah.
That is a electric bill for sure. And rather than paying that, I'm making a credit card payment. So that's the impetus usually for people to wake up and say, okay, I've had enough. Like, I can't live like this. My debt is not going down. I make plenty of money, but I have nothing left. I can't go on a vacation. I'm a paycheck away from being completely destitute, and this has got to stop. And so usually that's what it takes.
So when people get to that breaking point and they said enough is enough, they are willing to do whatever it takes to turn around and make a change for their life. And I guess at times the motivation will be either maybe for themselves or for their children, or there will be something that motivate and inspire them to make that turnaround and have a different mindset. But I'm still quite want us to explore this further, that people realize that, wow, they are making a lot of money, but at the end of the month, they check their bank account and it's zero. If at times it's even negative, they don't know where their money is going.
Right.
They cannot track what they are spending their money on.
Right.
So it appears that when people take the conscious effort to actually track where their money is going, that is a source of wake-up call for some people at times, right?
Yep. 100%. And yes, and I think that most people don't do that. Nowadays, you can go, let's say if you have credit card, right? Your credit card will actually categorize these expenses. So if you go on a statement, and you can kind of online, you click through whatever, and it'll show you how much I spent on clothes, how much I spent on food, how much I spent on gas or whatever, they categorizes. And sometimes if there's not a category, you can assign it to a category. So at the end of a time period, whether a month, 2 months, 3 months or whatever, you can look at what you spent, what category you spent money on. So you can say, okay, I spent $800 in the last 2 months on clothes. Do I need $800 of clothes in the next 2 months? or I spent whatever. And that's how you can begin to really do a deep, I guess, forensic dive into what you're actually spending, where your money's going. In some instances, bank statements can do this. Banks will, online banks now will categorize your expenses. So it's a great tool to use if you really want to get a handle on where your money's going. Anything can be, if you put your mind to it, anything can be measurable in this day and age, right? Yeah. You can't really use the excuse anymore. I have no idea where my money's going. Well, if you wanted to know, you would know. So a lot of times people don't want to know. Like I
don't want to know.
Exactly. Like I've actually had people tell me that.
Really?
Like, oh yeah. I've had people say what you said. I don't know. I've at the end of the month, I have no money left. And it's like, I don't even want to know where it went. I know I spent it and I make enough. I don't even want to know. Well, you should want to know. If you want to change, you do need to know. So there's really no excuse anymore. If you've got half a brain and can, use a mouse or a pad on your laptop, you'll know where your money's going.
Wow. But some people just don't want to know because they don't want to take responsibility,
right?
And they don't want to be accountable.
Right.
They say, well, I'm working for the money. I don't care. I don't want to know.
Right.
But yet they keep digging that hole.
And I think sometimes, DJ, is it's sort of hindsight's 20/20, and sometimes it's easy to be the armchair quarterback if you haven't gone through it. It's easy to say, hey, you just, like people who struggle with depression clinically, and other people have never had experience that. They just like, hey, wake up. You got a lot to be thankful for, and why are you like this? Like that doesn't help somebody in that situation.
Sure.
You can't just snap out of it. That's a serious mental illness. Well, spending sometimes is the same way.
Really?
Yeah. It's not like you can just, okay, stop. Cold turkey. Let's just stop. Like, you got to take baby steps. You got to have small little victories that develop that habit and motivate you. So sometimes in helping people, I'm like, hey, okay, how much did you spend eating out this month? I spent $500. Okay, so this next month, I'm not going to say don't eat out at all, because Dave Ramsey is like beans and rice, that's his famous saying. Beans and rice, and he talks like in first person, like. Yeah. What we're going to do this, like, what do you mean we? You're not going to do anything, Dave. You're a billionaire. You can do whatever you want. You're giving advice to somebody who's never had to, okay, because I've heard him. You've probably heard him. I've listened to him for years, and he'll say, what we're going to do is we're not going to eat out. The only time you're going to see inside of a restaurant is if you're working there washing the dishes. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. If this person's been eating out and then all of a sudden you're going to tell them they can't eat out at all for the next 2 years, that's not realistic. So what I would say is let's start with baby steps, And again, if you want to get out of debt quickly, then be radical. But if you want to develop a more of a lasting long-term habit and a lifestyle, then just have some small victories that lead to that shift in your mindset. So if you spent $500 eating out this month, let's spend $300. And let's take that $200 and apply it to debt, So and feel the victory of that, and understand you're not missing out by not eating out that extra time, and develop that habit of being self-controlled and saying no, occasionally. And the more you do that, and the more develop that muscle memory in your brain, the easier it becomes. So that's kind of, I think, the way that I would help somebody that has a chronic spending problem that is swimming in debt. Again, you just have to, everybody's different, and some people enjoy that. Some people can quit smoking cold turkey. Like, I'm never smoking again. And it works. Some people can't.
Yeah. That's actually very insightful, because I've realized that if you don't understand or don't know some people's story, it is easier to say, okay, get up and make a difference. Because there are cases of people who may be financially diligent, but then they have health challenges.
Sure.
And that just, turn things to the negative for them.
Yep.
Or someone that, things happen and people are not just able to catch up.
Right.
They can't even, get their head out of the water to breathe.
Right.
So we understand that. But that for people to make a change, they have to start with baby steps.
That's right.
And so talking about the baby steps, I know that Dave Ramsey that you referenced earlier on talks about the debt snowball and the debt avalanche, in terms of how people can recover or pay off their debt. And, can you explain a little bit about that, and how can people use that baby steps? Either they have student loan or credit card debt or whatever it is. How can someone out there begin to take baby steps to be financially free?
Okay. So, again, everything we're talking about is just a shift in your mindset, right? It's muscle memory. It's rewiring your neuro pathways, which doesn't happen like that. It's a process. So the difference between the avalanche and the snowball is the avalanche is when you take the highest amount of debt and you just attack it first. It's like the avalanche, right? The debt snowball is you take the lowest debt you have and you pay that off regardless of the interest rate, because it gives you more of a sense of accomplishment and it gives you more of a motivation then to go to the next one. So either way is fine. Whatever is going to work, whatever you're going to stick with, right? Like using an analogy of working out at the gym, right? Someone says, what is the best program for me when it comes to working out? And I give them the same answer, the one you're going to stick with. Okay. I can do whatever, I can make whatever program, and you don't follow it, it doesn't matter. So it's like the program you're going to stick with, that's what's going to work for you. So whatever works for you when it comes to the debt, whether it's the snowball, the avalanche, the whatever you want to call it, if you're making progress, then that's what you should do. So I'm not going to tell somebody, the highest interest rate, the lowest interest rate, the smallest, whatever. If you're experiencing victories and you're like, wow, I'm getting excited about getting out of debt. This is fun. I can see a huge, some victories here, then amen. Do it. Keep doing it. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm not going to pour cold water on your fire, So
whatever is going to work for you.
Yeah, whatever's going to work.
Stick with it.
But